So, Viraj, thank you for coming. It's a pleasure to have you here in Dubai. Can you please tell me a little bit about what you do and your business as well?
Sure, Amit, and it is a pleasure to be here as well. Essentially, what we do is support and facilitate corporates and individuals in shifting to the UAE. That has many different streams. There's a CSP element, there's a legal element, there's a real estate structuring element.
Hmm.
My particular focus is on the UK and UAE corridor,
Yeah,
and specifically in the sort of real estate and wealth management segment.
very nice. And I would also like to know a little bit about your family background and how it has helped you shape your business.
Sure. So we come from a long line of jewelers actually from Punjab. However, my grandfather left Punjab about 6 to 7 decades ago and moved to the UK
Hmm.
and established his legacy in aviation. So we were the GSA for Air France, and he was essentially awarded the second highest national order by the French president at the time, which is the Ordre du Mérite. And after that, they branched into many different segments, and
Hmm.
I think that's where I got my knack for problem solving from.
Very nice, very nice. That's a very interesting family history.
So, how about yourself, Amit? Tell me a bit about your journey. I know you've been in Dubai for a long time.
Yes, my journey is a little bit interesting for my friends and family. I came here in 1997. The idea was to stay for a couple of years and then move abroad. This was the current trend at that time. I came to visit my father. I fell in love with the place and I just stayed, right? Now, during these years, I changed careers a couple of times. My father was always a working man, unlike your family, which was a business background. So I was the first generation entrepreneur in the family, and my father's main contribution was giving me the platform to start my business. Now, over the years, I've done a number of things, but since 2011, I've been in financial services, starting with wealth management and project finance and SME funding since 2021.
Sure, that's an amazing story, and it's very funny you mentioned. You came here for a few years, ended up staying many more.
Yes.
What's your take on that? I feel like a lot of people, people regard UAE as a transient population, but I know a lot of my clients who come here often stay for much longer.
Yes, so the trend over the years has always been that people say they will come to UAE from different parts of the world. They say they will try out staying in Dubai. They come with very preconceived notions about the country, about the culture, and the standard of living. But the country starts growing for you, and then they start liking the place. They start liking the amenities, the facilities, and the
Sure.
lifestyle, and they start staying for longer and longer. So, as a financial advisor in my previous work, I came across people across all walks of life, and I could see this graduation of the tenure of people staying in the UAE for longer and longer.
So, it's very interesting you mentioned that. I agree with you that, a lot of people come here for a short time and end up staying much longer. Um, Given the current situation, which is a very hot topic at the moment, the US Iran conflict,
Yes.
what's your take on it? At the end of the day, I believe people have stayed resilient and stayed in Dubai. And why do you think that is?
Different people have different perspectives, but I can answer this question from my own perspective.
Sure.
So, staying with the theme of my background and why I stayed here for a number of years, uh, in the 29 years that I've been here in the UAE, I have survived the dot com crash, the second Gulf War, the COVID 19 pandemic, the
Sure.
2008 crisis, as well as the Russia Ukraine war and the Middle East war that's going on right now. Uh, the common theme was always the standard of living, the vision of the country and its leaders in shaping the way business is done and the way the economy is kept resilient, and also uh, the safety of family members that is so paramount for most expats in the UAE. So these are the reasons that are personal reasons. And then when you look at the business reasons, the ease of doing business, the policies that shape the speed of execution,
Sure.
the regulations, let's say, are not as stringent as the UK or the developed markets, for example, which facilitate doing things here much faster than rest of the world, India included,
Yeah.
right? So these are, I think, some of the reasons apart from tax that bring people to the UAE and they make them stay. Add to that the weather element, okay? You must be thinking, being new in the UAE, that the weather or the summers here specifically are very harsh. But I know a lot of people who came from London who now don't want to go back because they find this weather to be much better than the cold weather in UK, for example.
Yeah.
So these are some of the reasons, as you asked, for what people stay in the UAE.
Sure. So, you know, actually, we've actually been here since 2015. So I've been
Nice.
in and out for
Right.
quite a long time. I agree with you on the weather part.
Yes.
Then again, I come from the UK, where it's very rainy and gloomy at times.
Yeah.
But to your point, you mentioned from the perspective of being a veteran, being here the better part of 2, 3 decades. I think for a lot of my clients who are expats, given the current situation, when they were leaving the UK, I noticed they didn't necessarily shift everything, but they definitely shifted their primary residences.
Yes.
They themselves physically moved out of the country. And I think when this conflict struck, there wasn't that same mindset. They weren't sort of, we're going to up and leave. The way they thought about it is some stayed,
Mhm.
and some that had the privilege and freedom of choice to be in another location went. But they've all returned now. Granted that it's the summer, which is usually
Yes.
not as busy as it is, and I think this is one of the busiest summers I've seen in the UAE, because everybody's, like you said, eager to come back and work.
So that's interesting. Also, one of the reasons why UAE is very uh, nicely placed in the global order is because it's typically the geographical center of the world, if you look at the map.
Sure.
And that enables a lot of business and trade, cross-border trade between Europe, between the Middle East, between the MENA region, and also Asia.
Sure.
So that combined with the vision for building up tourism and the policies of keeping the political stability have shaped people's decisions or business owners' decisions to stay here in the UAE.
So you know what? I think we've talked a lot about why people have chosen to stay, given
Yes,
the conflict. How about we lean a bit more into what you mentioned about UAE being pro-business?
yes.
Why do you think companies have chosen to stay, and what would you say about their appetite to continue operating in the UAE?
So one of the reasons we spoke about is the stability of the country in terms of the political frameworks, the ease of doing business, and the speed of decision making.
Sure.
The leadership being so visionary, they are very pro business and they think 10, 20, 30 years ahead, right? So if we take this example of the Strait of Hormuz being blocked, for example, right? Now, every product that was dependent on shipping was affected. Every business that had a product dependent on shipping was affected, right? Now, you would be surprised to know, even though you have been here since 2015, that, for example, the Fujairah Habshan pipeline, which is, say, supposed to be a bypass for the Strait of Hormuz, this project has been in the works from the last 10, 15 years.
Sure.
Okay. So that shows you the vision of the leaders of this country, that they have not waited for this war to start. They have not waited for the strait to be closed. They have thought about this issue and prepared for it many, many years in advance. So that's just one example, and there are many more. The other example is infrastructure. So earlier, when I came to Dubai in '97, Dubai was very localized in certain parts. There was the old Dubai and the new Dubai at that time, right? The old Dubai was very traditional and Arabic. The new Dubai was meant more for expats to stay in, and it was a bit more modern.
Yeah.
Now, over the years, the focus has been on building communities in different parts of Dubai, moving closer to Abu Dhabi, the new Maktoum airport, which is supposed to double the capacity of the current airport and replace it eventually.
Yeah.
And then all these communities that they are building, along with the metros that support them, will be all self-contained communities, right, in different parts of Dubai. So that will be pockets of very livable and business-friendly communities in different parts of Dubai. And the infrastructure they're building is all there to support this sort of growth, which is very sustainable.
Sure.
So the new lines of metro that are coming up, the hospitals, the universities, the schools, the clinics, the focus on healthcare, all this is supporting businesses staying here or business people staying in the UAE and flourishing or rather not wanting to move from here.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you a question from my side as well. What do you think are the reasons from your perspective why people or business owners or high net worth individuals are moving from Europe or UK to the UAE?
So I think before I dive into that, you raised a very interesting point
Yeah,
about the vision of UAE, and how they plan in decades ahead. And I think it's very important to also highlight that it's not just the vision, it's the execution. And I
right,
think that's what very much separates them out from all the other nations in the world. Now, when we talk about businesses and individuals, an economy is not run by the largest institutes. It's run by, the masses, right?
true.
You look at developed nations. At some point in the cycle, they start to lean towards the large institutes. The investment banks to
Yes,
to buy up all the assets and lease them out. That's a common issue that the Western world has. Um, Not to say that that might not happen in the GCC at some point, but the GCC very much supports the small businesses,
mm,
the small guys. Given the current situation, I believe they had put a pledge beginning with 1 billion dirhams, and then they increased it later towards small businesses, for trade
correct.
license renewals, for, deferred payments. That shows that, they care about the little guys, and
Yes,
that goes a long way. Because as a small business owner, you need all the support you can get.
true.
And when you do that to hundred or thousands of them, that's what turns into the large institutes. That's what makes the economy run. So before we get into a bit more about what you do specifically in the UAE, I sort of wanted to wrap the conversation around what is it that you love about the UAE? You mentioned you've been in Dubai for a long time. How have you seen it progress? What's the journey of the UAE been to you?
It's a very interesting question. So, when I came here in '97, in October '97 specifically, uh, the UAE was a lot more family driven and traditional as far as the culture was concerned, as far as the way of doing business was concerned. So we had this big family houses, and they were the institutions that you spoke of, equivalent to the institutions in the West, where the majority of the family office ran the businesses or they drove the strategies that enabled businesses. As the years passed, I have seen the growth of small businesses in the UAE. Okay, a lot of the policies that the leaders here enabled the businesses to start. So, a lot more entrepreneurs entering the market, a lot more new businesses in new sectors coming up in the market, and the evolution of all the products and services that go along with that. Okay, so earlier we would have the traditional bread and butter kind of businesses, the automotive, the transport, the hospitals, the traditional brick and mortar kind of businesses.
Sure,
As the years passed, technologies evolved and the policies of enabling business evolved. Now we see all the different types of products and services, which are some of them are not even in Western countries or in other countries, that we see unique to UAE as well. And one of the examples of enabling businesses, we have a competitor to Amazon now here in the UAE,
sure,
right? So that's a big win for the UAE, that we have something that's as big or better than Amazon in the UAE, which is noon.com, for example.
sure,
And similarly, there are many incubators for startups. There are a lot of VC funds here, and a number of fintech companies that support the small business owner
yeah.
as far as funding is concerned.
That's a very interesting point. I think for me, I've lived in the UK, I've lived in India, I've been in and out of the UAE, like I mentioned. I came here full time about 2 to 3 years ago. Um, and living in all these places, one thing I'd say with the UAE, and this is similar to what we were talking about earlier about
Mhm.
vision and execution. There's a saying by His Highness that he even put in his book about the lion and gazelle that
Yes,
I'm sure you've heard.
yes,
And it's a very interesting saying for me because coming from countries like the UK
mhm,
and India, there is a level of, I'd say, complacency.
yes,
And I don't think the complacency stems from there not being the will to do business. Rather, like we've discussed multiple times, over here it's very pro business. Whereas in those other territories, there may not be as many incentives for smaller businesses to try harder, to do their best to scale. And I think that whole saying about the lion and gazelle really embodies what the UAE is.
yes,
It doesn't matter who you are. Um, at the end of the day, you better run.
yes.
And I think that that's what draws me to the UAE. That's what I love about it. Every morning I wake up here, I know there's an interesting day ahead.
There's a buzz.
There's a buzz.
Yes,
There's purpose to what I do, and it's exciting. No matter the wealth, prosperity, and success that comes along the way, it keeps me motivated to keep going. And I think that
true.
changes everything.
Same for me. The best part of what I do is getting up every morning, meeting new entrepreneurs, trying to raise funds for them, but more importantly, learning about their successes, the
Yeah,
challenges they face, and how they have overcome those challenges. So for me, meeting every entrepreneur is a learning experience. I learn more from them about the things that worked for them, what did not, and then we try to offer solutions the
sure.
best we can. What, on that perspective, what do you think uh, you have seen in this market as far as your institutional clients are concerned?
For me, like I mentioned, I focus on the UK and UAE corridor. Um, so what clients prioritize here is very different to what clients prioritize there.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, I think over here, as I'm sure you're aware of this being in the field, Middle Eastern family offices and financial institutes don't have too much of an issue with raising funds.
True.
Uh, the capital sits very much in the GCC when you look
Yes.
at the global capital flows. But for them to truly expand and diversify into other regions like the UK, uh, it'll take them a while to be able to get execution in house. And
Mhm.
so they don't rely on partners just for deal flow. They essentially require execution engines to learn the trade,
Right.
as any business would. So a lot of the institutes over here are looking actively at the UK. Again, like I said, deal flow. There's a great source of opportunities
Yes.
and great investment potential in the UK given the current situation. And family offices are definitely leveraging that from here. And that's sort of what we do. We provide that execution engine on the ground there. But on the flip side, we work with UK institutes. And a lot of those UK institutes are a bit more used to, you could say, highly securitized
Mm-hmm.
yield generating assets.
Right.
And Dubai has the market for that, right? There's a lot of craze around the off-plan segment,
Mm-hmm.
but I focus much more on the secondary, the ready-built assets.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think a lot of institutes from the UK or even the Western world that invest with a very long-term mindset. It's never, if I buy this, when can I sell it? It's more so, okay, the plan is 2 decades. This is the IRR I can make. This is
Mm-hmm.
the maximum value I can extract from the asset. And if it passes a certain threshold, we'll approve the project. So it's two very different mindsets, I'd say.
So, since you spoke about real estate, do you have any views on what's the current situation, how the war has affected it, and what do you foresee happening in the coming months?
See, I think the market's still very strong. If you look at transactional volumes, not changed that much. But what I will say is the target clients, the transacting audience has changed, right?
True.
There was a lot of high net worth individuals that were heavily investing in the UAE.
Hmm.
And not to say they're not investing anymore, it's just that in a time of uncertainty, cash is king. And
Yes.
they're holding their cash waiting for the right deal. Meanwhile, sellers are still very bullish and resilient about the UAE. So they're not willing to sell at a
Yes.
discount. And so what you've seen is sort of a standstill where the market's not moving in the individual segment, not because they don't want to participate.
Mm.
It's just the seller believes they could still get a great price and the buyer believes cash is king.
True.
So what you've seen is it shifted to that institutional segment, and that's why we're focusing on it as well. And this comes back to UK institutes and Western institutes that have already had the cash in hand for years now. They've been looking at the UAE. They
Mm.
know that UAE is going to be part of their portfolio long term, and right now what they see is an uncertainty. They see a great acquisition and entry point.
So, Viraj, talking about the UK, we have heard a lot in the media about so many number of millionaires leaving the UK. What are your take on that?
I think when it comes to certain forms of media, the headlines can be a bit misleading.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that is the headlines say there was a mass exodus of millionaires last year from the UK. I
Right.
believe just over 16,000, and that's a big number. Now, what qualifies as leaving? I think that's a very important point. Every definition matters. And when they say leaving, these guys aren't just, liquidating every single asset they have and going to another country. The way domiciliary regulations have changed, the way tax regulations have changed, different other factors for sure, right? Public safety. There's many things to discuss when it comes to
Yeah.
the UK, but given that time, people didn't want to stay there anymore. That doesn't mean they don't want to work there. So
Mm.
when they say millionaires leaving the UK, I believe they're leaving from a perspective of, I'd say, tax and livability
Hmm.
rather than business operations.
Right. So they still maintain the element of what's worked for them in the past, and keep that intact, and then try out new ventures here.
Very much so. They're not going to change their bread and butter.
Mm.
And that there's a lot going for and against the UK. I think a lot of people look at the UK as in its final days, but I
Yes.
have a very different perspective. We always knew the UK was going to go through a tough time given Brexit,
Right.
right?
Yes.
And I'm not going to say whether it was a good or bad decision. I think that's a different political debate for another time.
Yeah.
But what I will say is COVID did exacerbate that, right? You
Right.
know, with Brexit, they were facing a lot of issues, especially with trade, right? And given COVID, that just affected supply chains more.
Hmm.
So I think that was the beginning of a downward cycle, which I believe now has bottomed out. That's not to say that the UK is out for the count. You know, like I said, it's bottomed out on the cycle. I do believe it's going to pick up again, and that's why people are still working there. You know, they still very much believe that in the nation. They very much believe in economic growth. They're not going to change their bread and butter.
Right.
But then again, you only have one life,
That's
and
true. That's true.
livability matters.
Exactly.
And that's why I wouldn't say people choose between the UK or UAE. You know, the smartest investors, the smartest clients I work with leverage the strengths of both.
That's a smart way to do it.
Yeah,
So, moving on to another topic, okay, knowing family offices and institutions and their ways of investing. The first point is always real estate, commercial, residential, okay. From my perspective, if I was to boil it down to a sentence for both of these geographies, UK has always been a very stable real estate market with, let's say, very less ups and downs.
sure,
Okay. And that was driven by the maturity of the market over the number of years,
sure,
right? UAE as a real estate market has evolved over the years, but it's still in its nascent stages. Regulations are being formalized in many areas. Investor protection laws are coming in place,
agreed.
but it's not maybe as uh, protective for the investors at the moment as it is in the UK, and the rules are getting there eventually. Okay, let's say the rules are developing. So what I have seen is that has enabled the growth of the market, but there are a lot of ups and downs in the values of the properties here. What's your take on that?
So I very much agree with you. You know, when you look at the UK, especially for family offices specifically, they favor, as we've discussed in the past, security, right?
Yes,
They favor downside protection. And the UK very much offers that, not just because it's a mature market, it has historical underwriting. You know,
yes,
no one can dispute that. You know, the British Empire has been there for a very long time.
mhm,
And that's why when you look at London especially, uh, even in this market, when it's down, people say, you know, you can get 20, 30, 40, 50% off. I'm not disputing that there are good distress opportunities out there, but that's not entirely true because the last 2, 3 years it hasn't transacted a huge amount. And the reason is, again, it's the same as the UAE right now. Sellers know what they hold. They're
mhm,
not going to let it go that easy. And there's many buyers holding cash in the market.
right.
So I agree with you. UK, less volatility, very stable, downside protection. It's a safe place to park capital. UAE is a very different market. I think there's a product for everyone.
Yes,
And I think that's what a lot of economies and real estate markets don't have. Um, you know, UAE, if you bring risk capital here, you can make great returns. But there are safe investments. You look at commercial space specifically in the UAE,
mm,
they're yet to go through that cycle.
right.
You know, the last 20, 30 years has very much been fueled by residential. And you look in Dubai especially, how many commercial buildings are there really? Compared to the volume of businesses shifting and starting up in the UAE,
There's a big short supply. I
there's
agree.
a shortage of supply, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, when you talk about safety, it is very safe. You know, you're getting strong yields, the assets are built. Yes, there's commercial space coming in, but if you go into a ready space, there is a opportunity for restoration. There is an opportunity for refurbishment. There is a liquidity pool, or you know, a pool of demand of corporates in Dubai that would want the space. So there's very much safe products, and obviously, if you're looking at residential, it
Hmm.
very much depends on a variety of factors. You know, location, again, like we talked about earlier, vision. the master
Yes.
plan? Where's the infrastructure coming up? If it's in the off-plan segment, what developer are you going with?
Mm.
There's a lot of developers that have come to the UAE, specifically in Dubai,
Yeah.
in the last 2 years, and from all areas of the world. You've got Russian, Kazakhstanis, Uzbekistanis, Turkish developers, UK developers, Indian developers.
Yeah.
All of them come with track records, and they look at UAE not necessarily to make the best returns as a developer. They look at UAE for brand credibility.
Yes.
Because, when they come to the UAE and they put their name in a building, they can say, we associate ourselves with Dubai, we associate ourselves with luxury.
Yes.
And that's the game for them. And that doesn't mean they're the right developer to go with necessarily. I believe very strongly with the names that have been here for a very long time. Obviously, you've got the government ones, Ema, Al Wasl,
Mm-hmm.
Nikhil, Miras now under Dubai Holdings. Then you've got a lot of other reputable players, especially Select Group. They
Yes.
came a long time ago from the UK,
Mm-hmm.
and look at the legacy they've built.
So, Viraj, I wanted to touch on another topic.
Sure.
The topic about the laws and the regulations and the differences you see between the UK and UAE vis-a-vis these two topics.
Sure. I mean, regulations is a very complex topic to tackle, right? Because regulations are in place for various stakeholders. It's not just investor protection. It's also about the law as a whole,
Mhm.
to prevent illicit activities from transacting, to ensure that all members of economy essentially prosper.
Yes.
When you look at that in a real estate perspective, I do genuinely believe that the UK has in the last recent years been overregulated. Specifically for small businesses, when you look at the real estate side, yes, regulation has come in, but it's come in with a purpose. A lot of people bang their heads against the wall with fire and safety regulation in the UK, but then there was the Grenfell tragedy, where
Yes.
a lot of people lost their lives from that fire. Uh, is it right to have that level of regulation? I don't think there's a definite answer. Is there a need? Yes.
True.
Right? Like I said, regulation affects many stakeholders, and it's not just about financial protection.
Mhm.
In this case, I'm talking about actual human lives. So I think, though the UK may at times be a bit problematic to deal with, they've done a very good job making sure everybody's protected. And it's also encouraged a lot of different businesses to emerge. You look at private credit. Private credit's only possible in the UK because of asset securitization regulations in place.
Nice.
You look at a lot of these PE firms, a lot of these institutes in the UK, and the question is, why don't they shift to the UAE? And a lot of people say, oh, they have an office in DIFC. It's very different to what people assume, because when you look at these institutes, they don't have the GPs structured here in the Middle East, right?
Right.
They have structures here to solicit funds to the UK.
Right.
And I think that's very important to understand, because without those specific securitization regulations, that's a big untapped market that the UAE is now stepping into. And to bring it back to the UAE, that's going to be a very interesting time for her, because you look at real estate here. Yes, there's leverage, right? Yes, there's debt products, but in that leverage, it has been a very simple form of project investment. When you start to talk about private credit and get into the whole game of IRR versus ROI, there's a lot more capital that can be deployed in
Right.
the UAE. And I think, as you mentioned earlier, with investor protection measures being enforced, especially since the last year with a lot of restructuring with the central bank, but UAE is set to see a lot more economic growth and exciting times in the real estate market.
So, talking about securitization, from my limited understanding of the rules in UK, I believe that banks financial institutions and even individuals can take the first charge on property if they are lending against it.
That's
Is
correct.
it right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very much
So
correct.
that is one of the major differences between the UK and UAE as far as the first charge rule is concerned. Over here, banks and the non-banking financial institutions are the only, uh, let's say, parties that can take the first charge on a property, and individuals or private equity guys or anybody who is not in this category can take a first charge on a plot of land or a real estate. Do you think that limits the ability for the plot owner or the property owner to leverage on his property and grow his portfolio? Do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
Again, as I mentioned, it leaves an untapped market, unserviced,
Yes.
essentially. To answer your point, is it a good or bad thing? It really depends on what the product is.
Mm.
When you mentioned a plot of land, to have first charge on a plot of land in Dubai
Mm.
still doesn't ensure that you'll get it sold at a price that covers
True.
your debt. At
True.
the end of the day, UAE has two very different sides to it. Especially Dubai. You've got the built ready assets generating income, and you've got the off-plan segment. And the off-plan segment, you've got all these sub-locations,
Mhm.
right? And you go to a mature market like the UK, the reason the first charge in asset securitization works is space is limited.
Right.
The demand is there. People need the space. The space is ready today. So yes, the securitization is a good thing to have, but at the end of the day, if you can't sell it, what's the point of claiming it? So I
Yes.
think that's very important to note. I think the UAE will definitely do better with it, but I think they do have a bit of time to go until it's very effective for investors.
Right. And, do you think that valuations or the method of valuation also has something to do with this? For example, comparables in UK
Sure.
versus comparables in UAE. The baseline data, I believe, has been there historically in the UK versus the comparables data here in the UAE being a little bit in its nascent stages. What do you feel about that?
I fully agree with that. As you rightfully pointed out, nation stages, right?
Yeah.
You look at the UAE, as we've discussed in this, the commercial cycle is just coming in. So that's number one. They haven't gone through that cycle yet. So when you talk about comparables, they are going to vary very heavily.
Yes.
You look at towers in Business Bay, there's one done by Omniat. It's reaching around 10,000 dirhams a foot. That's
Yeah.
£2,000 a foot. That's
Wow.
prime zone one London
Mm.
commercial prices in the last decade.
Mhm.
And you're getting that in Dubai. Meanwhile, you go to Barsha Heights, you see anywhere between 1,500 and 4,000 dirhams a foot. It's a humongous difference,
True.
right? And Barsha Heights is fully built. This project by Omniat was off plan at some stage, has come about in the last 2-3 years.
Mhm.
So very very big difference. I think there is a lot of work going on in the background to change that. And what I mean by that, given the current situation, Abu Dhabi had put a rental freeze
True.
in terms of price hikes. And I think that's a very good initiative because at the end of the day, one thing that the UAE is going through at the moment is restoration. The UK is not only historically underwritten, they've had many phases, every few decades where all the buildings in, Mayfair or another prime location gets restored, right? Full refurbishment of the whole location.
True.
Dubai hasn't necessarily had that yet, but that's what you're seeing now, right? A lot of these funds are coming in, acquiring old derelict buildings, not even derelict, old buildings that are being rented out, and they're putting the effort into it. They're extracting the value. That's a lot of what my clients do, right?
Right.
From the UK, they come acquire at a good discount, refurbish, and restore the properties. So there's definitely a market for that, and that market is going to make the comparables a bit more sensible.
Yes, adding to that point, I believe, for example, the villas on the Palm,
Sure.
now most of them are 20, 15, 20 years plus old. And what we have seen is a rising trend on these villas being refurbished by developers and then being sold at a premium, right? So I believe that is developing here slowly now as the properties get older. What are your views on that, on the same segment?
I'll be very honest. I genuinely do believe
Yeah,
parts of the market are due a correction,
yeah,
but I'm very hesitant to. What I'd say is correction doesn't mean crash. I think
yes,
a lot of people interchange and confuse the terms. A crash is market wide. A correction is location specific.
right,
And what I mean by that is, yes, the Palm being one of the few waterfront locations in the UAE today has established a certain price point. Is that a sustainable price point? That's a huge question mark. And what I mean by that is, on the point of comparables, not all of the villas you buy on the Palm are of the same quality. But you look at a villa that's been there 20 years, and you look at a plot next to it, they're going at the same price.
right. Okay, so to wrap that topic up, also, uh, what do you feel is the changes that will happen in the real estate given that the war is about to end, and how will it affect the investors' outlook from UK?
I think it's very opportune timing in terms of, not obviously for the conflict, but of UAE summer.
Right.
During this time, people do tend to take a sabbatical and travel for a bit. They enjoy their holidays in the summer heat.
Mm-hmm.
And that's good because, as I mentioned previously, sellers still believe they can get the same price and buyers are holding cash. Given the situation, that can prolong another month or two with the summer. And by then, the demand is going to pick up. You look at the streets of Dubai today, the traffic's returned.
Yes.
I used to go from DIFC to Marina in peak traffic, maybe about an hour. Then there was a moment where, for a month, maybe it was 20, 30 minutes drive only, and that was a great time. But, it's back to 45, 50 minutes, and that is an indication, not of the lack of infrastructure, that's an indication of the volume of people that's returned. And that volume is going to keep returning till, post-August. And when that happens, the market will have a stronger foot to stand on.
It's very interesting you said that. Over the years, I've seen this to be very true.
Huh.
Whenever there's traffic, a lot of it on the roads, the economy is doing well. When the traffic's less, people start worrying.
Yeah.
So, yes, it sounds counterintuitive, but it is actually true. The footfall matters,
Yeah.
the presence of people, and the velocity of money, the speed of doing business, everything boils down to traffic in the end. And many people complain about the traffic. I see it as a welcoming sign.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Viraj, you spoke a lot about real estate investments here and in the UK. So I have a question for you. Let's say one of our investors has 100 million dirhams to invest.
Sure.
What would you suggest them and why?
I think it's a very different product depending on where you are. I think in the UK, with that sort of budget, there's two products that come to mind. If you're looking at London specific, there is a huge market for single distressed assets where you can come in at a great price, do a bit of extra work on it,
Hmm.
and sell it to the right audience. When I say the right audience, that's very much people residing in the GCC and Asia. So a lot of these family offices and institutes that come from UAE or even the Gulf as a whole um, that's the part they can do, right? They
Right.
can raise the capital, they're confident in their liquidity pool and who they can bring to buy the asset. They're doing the work
Yes.
is one of the aspects, and the deal flow is the second.
Right.
So for 100 million, I would go into a single distress asset in London. If it's outside of London, the horizon expands.
Mm-hmm.
There's a big market for sort of country estates, or golf course centered estates where the general UK population, obviously everybody likes a holiday,
Yes.
and at the end of the day, especially after Brexit, Europe is a trip away. In the UK itself, you've got very different locations. You've got Cornwall for beaches in the
Mm-hmm.
south. You've got Lake District for mountain and hiking and scenery. Scotland's beautiful.
Yes.
So when people in the UK travel on a holiday, on a staycation, they go to these sort of old country estates, and when you're investing in them, especially the derelict or ancient ones, you're basically paying for the price of the land.
Yes. And also, I guess the heritage value.
Exactly.
Yes.
So that's what I'd say in the UK. In the UAE, it's much broader, right? It completely depends, I'd say, on your risk appetite and your capital goals. Commercial, I'm very bullish on.
Mm-hmm.
The UAE, as we discussed, does have a shortage. The demand's very much there. You just can't go wrong.
Yes.
One thing that I've seen recently do very well in Dubai specifically is flexi desks. So I'm not talking about the business center where you sort of get the ajaris done. I'm talking more so of an actual co-working space where
Right.
companies
Yes, that's
can.
coming up a lot.
Yeah. In fact, I have a membership at a co-working place apart from our offices in One Central, 25H.
That's a
So
very
it's,
nice place.
yeah, it's a lovely place.
Yeah.
It's called Dubai Founders HQ.
Right.
So it's very amazing in the sense, not only are you getting to sit in DIFC and at a very nice place, I'd say the real benefit is the people you come across.
It's a fantastic vibe. I've been there.
Yeah, it's a fantastic vibe. You come across a variety of different firms, and Dubai is built on collaboration.
Yes.
So co-working is something people are naturally drawn to, not only because it's a place for them to work, it's a place for them to socialize, network, foster good partnerships. And so that's one thing I would definitely get into with 100
Beat
million.
sitting in an office.
It does. It's you know what? Like I said, even though we have the office,
Yeah.
I prefer to go there. It's a refreshing start to my day.
True.
So on the topic of 100 million, obviously I answered in real estate terms.
Yes.
Your field is a bit more broader on the capital raising side.
Yes.
So what would you say that the 100 million would go towards?
Well, I work with family offices and high net worth investors, right? Now, real estate is nothing new for them.
Sure.
Definitely, that's a starting point for any family office or investor. What I see at this point in time, given the current situation, they're taking a pause on the run-of-the-mill real estate investments. Having said that, they are acquiring strategic plots of land or projects or buildings that generate yield with a long-term view. But the retail investors are taking a pause on investments in real estate.
True.
What I see vis-a-vis the 100 million question is investors are pouring their money with a long-term view into businesses.
True.
Businesses and projects that make sense, let's say on a 5 or 10 year horizon. Okay, given that the war is hopefully coming to an end, I think the case for long-term investing into projects and businesses is something that people are looking at now versus making a quick return on real estate, if you get my point of view.
Sure. So as you mentioned about where the capital would be deployed, what would you say is the qualification criteria for sort of arranging that funding?
So it differs across our panel of investors. In broadly, we work with two segments. One is the small to medium enterprise or the medium SMEs, the medium-sized SMEs, right? Here we work with fintech companies, companies that do uncollateralized lending
Okay.
to solve short-term cash flow issues for businesses. Okay.
Yeah.
Traditionally, SMEs have only been served by banks, but now we see this whole slew of fintechs coming into the market, offering different products like business loans, uncollateralized, revenue-based financing, invoice discounting,
Sure.
things like that, right? And for them, the criteria is that the business should ideally be 2 or more years in operation
Yeah.
with a proven business model, with valid trade licenses and tenancy contracts. And more importantly, they should have a good credit history. Okay, so their AECB score should be good. Also, they should not have any bounce checks, or they should not treat their business bank account like a personal bank account. This is one of the big issues we have seen in this market. Uh, a bonus would be to have good audited financials. Okay, most companies here, especially the SMEs, they see having books as an unnecessary expense.
Sure.
Sometimes they try to optimize for tax.
Yeah.
Okay, but that makes them less creditworthy and makes it more difficult for us to raise capital for them.
Sure.
So that's as far as the SMEs are concerned. Okay, then we have the larger businesses, the businesses that need growth or expansion capital. Obviously, these companies have been around the block. They have borrowed from banks. They have taken money from the fintechs, and
Yeah.
now they need a bigger chunk of cash for growing their business. Okay, so here we work with family offices and ultra high net worth investors. And in this segment, as you can imagine, and having yourself worked with family offices, the main criteria for the investors is capital preservation. Okay.
Yeah.
The second criteria is return on investment, a steady return on investment. Okay. Now, in this segment, they look at two sides of the coin. One, what the business they're investing into has done in the past. So
Sure.
that is things like your books, your balance sheet, profit and loss statement, your track record as promoters, your experience, educational qualifications, the key jobs that you have pulled off in your sector, things like that. And
Sure.
then the other side of the coin is what you're planning to do in the short, medium, and long term. Things like your 3 year plan, a 5 year plan, and the long term plan as well. To add to that, they look at your business feasibility study, the market research you have carried out with an independent third party, how you are justifying those numbers in your financial model, and also whether your projections are realistic. So you need to have 2 or 3 scenarios for the investor. Things like the worst case scenario, the best case scenario, and something in between.
Yeah.
This gives investors a confidence that you have done your homework and you know what you're doing exactly.
Sure.
Right? And the sad part of what I see in this market with businesses and business owners who are very good at what they do in terms of making money is there is a gap between their technical expertise and their ability to talk to investors.
It's very interesting you mentioned that, because I think along that those lines you also sort of brought up the topic of using their corporate accounts as personal bank accounts. What would you say are the most common challenges these companies face when trying to arrange the funding, or even that you face when you try to arrange the funding for them?
So here I'll take a step back to talk about the big picture, right?
Sure.
So as you can imagine, coming from UK, the tax laws, the legal protection, the corporate structures are all very mature there, right? UAE as an economy is now putting those infrastructure in place, being part of the World Trade Organization. Now they are bringing all these rules and regulations in place. VAT wasn't here until a couple of, let's say, number of years ago. It
Sure.
only started a number of years ago, and now they came up with corporate tax to level the playing field between the Middle East and the European countries, right? Now, the legacy businesses were quick to adapt, but the SME segment and the MSME segment,
Yeah.
they had to change their whole mindset about working or doing business in a tax-free environment versus suddenly seeing two different types of taxes come into effect, right?
Yeah.
Now, as you can imagine, it's affected their cash flow, their profitability, their business models, and now they're coming to grips with uh, tailoring or factoring this into their business, right?
Sure.
And with that comes the pain of putting all this infrastructure in place. So the first question or the reluctance I see from SME business owners, why do we need to have books? We do a lot of cash business.
Yeah.
If I put that money into a bank account, I would have to pay VAT. Why do we have to pay corporate tax? Or what can I do to mitigate it? So they sometimes tend to have a books on the side versus a books that is shown to the authorities, right?
Sure.
Now, it works in some cases, but as the rules get more and more mature, it will start getting to be a problem for these business owners, right? Um, and the biggest example of this, I was sitting with a real estate company last week. They do a lot of labor camp business.
Okay.
That's all cash business, and that money goes straight into the bank account and then eventually withdrawn by the the owners as their earnings, but it doesn't show up in the books. So their turnover on the books is 2-3 million, and then the actual turnover is about 5 or 6, right?
Sure.
So I advise them that you need to have your books in order because they came to me for raising capital. I said, you can't have the cake and eat it too,
Yeah.
right?
Sure.
You need to accept certain realities of doing business in the UAE, follow the good practices of maintaining the right kind of books,
Yeah.
and make yourself credit worthy to an investor whom you seek capital from, right? This is all apart from obviously following the rules, which everyone should be doing. But to make yourself credit worthy, you need to give a base to consultants like us or make our job easier to raise capital. So, one is obviously the books. The second is not treating your corporate bank account like a personal piggy bank. I've seen this. The problem it creates is the investor looks at the incoming and outgoing of a business, the cash flow,
Yeah.
and he says, I can understand this supplier payments. I can understand the client's payments coming in. But why is this money going to pay personal credit card bills, or why is it going to pay the school fees and things like that? Now, perks are different from expenses or valid expenses, and this is where their books or their requests for loans get denied. Okay,
Sure.
investors want to see a clear separation between company finances and the business owner's finances. Another factor is also the credit history. Okay, one example for this is a tech company that I am raising capital for. They have a 50 million turnover, but they have bounced checks for 40,000 dirhams, right?
Sure.
Now, from an outsider's perspective, that does not make sense.
Yeah.
A company with that sort of turnover growing fast, why would their checks bounce at minuscule amounts? When I took a deep dive into this company structure, it was two of these tech guys very good at what they do, uh, but they did not have the financial acumen of managing their business, the finance side of their businesses.
Yeah.
So for them, having a CFO was an unnecessary expense, which they were trying to avoid, and that sort of reflected in the credit history. The money was there, but the checks bounced. And
Sure.
of course, they cleared it later on. But now every institution looks at their AECB score and denies them funding for a fantastic business.
Yeah.
So these are some of the things I feel that we as consultants, we add value, we help make the business credit worthy and raise capital for them.
So, you've taken me through, what it takes to raise the capital, the challenges. Let's talk a bit about the mistakes, the common mistakes that your clients may make, or the mistakes you see happen too often in the capital raising world.
Yes, so capital raising, as you know, has got a lot of parameters, okay? But I'll talk about the three main areas of improvements I see in most businesses that I talk to, okay? The first one is the accounting system. The accounting system matters more than you think it does. You need
Sure.
to have a common and very detailed accounting system for your business, okay? The days of tally are over. You need to have something like Zoho Books or Microsoft or something like that, which gives you a rounded view of your operations, finances, sales, and it links everything together, okay? That makes your bookkeeping much easier and transparent as well.
Sure.
Okay, one of the examples for this has been uh, a company that used to run a small data center for government departments. Their CFO intentionally ran the whole accounts of an Excel file because, as you know, Excel files can be modified.
Yeah.
And he ended up embezzling money against the business owner's wishes,
Yeah.
and the company went down when there were legal repercussions to it as well,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
So a centralized accounting system protects you as much as it enables the raising of capital, okay?
Sure.
The second is the establishment of a holding company, okay? I've seen so many businesses, a perfume brand that I recently was introduced to for raising capital, where they have 17 outlets that do business at various levels. And they said we need 4-5 million to expand and get into another 30 outlets. And I asked them about their holding structure, and they say, oh, well, it's all individually owned by one family member. Okay.
Sure.
So, as you can imagine, it represents a challenge for consultants like us, where when we raise capital, it's the investor versus the borrower.
Sure.
So, which of these entities would be the borrowing entity? And the short answer was it has to be the one with the highest amount of turnover.
Yeah.
Okay. The problem with that is if you use the turnover of the highest performing entity, what happens to the turnover of the remaining entities, right? It precludes them from raising larger capital. So having a holding structure definitely helps in establishing the value of the company as well as raising capital. The third and most important aspect has got very little to do with finance, but it's also the legal aspect.
Sure.
Okay. Uh, Especially talking about cross-border movement of capital and business owners moving from UK to UAE.
Yes.
There being a very significant difference in the legal structures in both places.
Yeah.
You need to have or employ the services of a proper law firm which has expertise in both domains, okay, for them to protect you against unnecessary litigation, uh, enforceability and validity of contracts, labor issues, payments and suppliers, payments for suppliers and credit policies for customers. These are all the things that a proper law firm can help you establish. And they can also help possibly in the structuring of your company,
Sure.
to create the holding company in a jurisdiction that's best suited for your business and industry.
Yeah.
So these are, from my perspective, the most common mistakes I see that growing businesses suffer from or have not put in place, which makes them less credit worthy.
Sure. And you know what? I'm very glad that you mentioned the last part, because to bring that back to what we do, that's something our clients and us, we as individuals as well can relate to. Moving from the UK,
Yeah.
People on the ground here understand the market here in a way that the UK won't be able to,
Right.
right?
Yes.
And that being said, they won't understand the market there because UK and UAE are very, very different, not only from a regulatory perspective and a tax perspective, even when you look at other streams, like you mentioned capital financing in companies. For me, it might be capital financing in real estate. It's a different product almost altogether.
Yes.
So you were spot on with saying that you need a competent party that has both sides of the border essentially covered.
True.
And I think it's been very interesting to chat to you today. It's definitely given me
Same here.
a lot more insight into how your world works, especially in the UAE. I think it's you mentioned that you've been in it for about 2 decades, but it's still very much an emerging part of the UAE, and I think
Yes.
there's a lot more business and excitement to come in that field. And yeah, it was a pleasure.
Same here. Pleasure having you. Thank you.
Thank you.